Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, Scott Cosenza, and John Clark. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation News online TV news program. Julian Assange is out of prison after agreeing to plead guilty to a single charge of breaching the espionage law in the United States. Assange achieved notoriety when his anti-secrecy website published documents that have been described as classified, military, and diplomatic between 2000 and 2011. These disclosures include footage of U.S. airstrikes in Baghdad and a range of military logs from the Afghanistan and Iraq military operations. They also include sensitive diplomatic cables. To some, Assange is a heroic journalist who exposed war crimes, government criminality, and the blasé attitude of a national administrations to individual privacy. Others question journalistic integrity, who may have endangered the lives of military service members and Afghan civilians who had provided intel to the U.S. Is this how we're going to handle leaks from now on, John, or is this just not fair play for Assange?
Well, I think it's a high-profile case for a reason, and as to whether it's fair play to him or not, I mean, he has other issues. There's the whole issue of Sweden. I mean, I don't know all of the facts of his life. Doesn't seem to have been very fair play. Seems like they pulled out every stop to bury this guy, and so many are concerned that this is going to have a chilling effect. That a journalist is being convicted of espionage for telling the truth about some pretty dodgy military activities of the U.S. government. And that's why, there are strong free speech implications here. I think what's also, though, maybe, again, looking at the big picture here, is why weren't the rest of, where was the rest of the journalistic community to support him, to carry the same information? What does this tell us about the state of journalism today versus, the Walter Cronkite era? The man is regarded widely as a hero. Others regard him as a rogue. I'm not aware that he actually got anybody killed. But the balance in the middle, I'm not sure in the end that he hasn't marked and inspired a path for a new generation of online journalists. And that's what I am to hope, because clearly mainstream media journalism has failed. And, it's clear around our country, the mainstream media have abdicated any role in journalism. They are now propagandists for Biden. I mean, it is laughable.
State media adjacent, is that what you're telling me here?
I think that's what we could call it. And whether it is or not, the solution is, what do we see happening right now with COVID, with the border, with all of the narratives coming out of the globalists and the federal government? We see online growth in Substack, like mine, a little plug there, but others we see like Matt Taibbi and the Twitter files. All of that's come out of true journalism, which I hope and think may have been inspired by Assange, because as much as Assange is going, he's pleading out now, and that seems like a failure. As a former criminal defense attorney, I can tell you there's no way he could do otherwise. There's huge pressure on the government to get rid of him, to get him out of there, because it's a bad look for Biden coming in once again to the election year. His family is pressing him. He has health issues. He's been at a maximum security facility for 5 years. I think the details of the case have been lost through the clouds of 14 years and the volumes of it. But the substance of it, the foundation is that he won. He took on the biggest power in the universe of humanity. And in essence, he won. He's kind of getting away. So they're trying to save face for Biden and the feds. But this guy, I mean, they should make movies about what he's done. He's actually been able to stab Goliath in the eye. And so I'm hoping actually that more people will be inspired to follow suit and follow in his footsteps. And maybe I'm just naive and hopeful. But clearly, we shouldn't be punishing, and the Obama administration particularly had a history of this, punishing whistleblowers. We shouldn't be punishing whistleblowers, and and now we have an iconic hero of a whistleblower. Let's hope that inspires more young people to embrace that ethics instead of the CNN ethic that we've seen, which is about money and falsehood.
Hey, Graham, hero or danger to society? I mean, didn't we applaud and still do, bring up Woodward and Bernstein for Watergate?
Well, I think you have to look at this angle, and that is that those people who believe that Assange actually should have been prosecuted and imprisoned, the justification they use is, well, the information Assange exposed actually put people in danger. Well, I would say that even just inside of this country, just over the last, let's say 10, 12, maybe 14 years, how many times has a national newspaper or perhaps a national television news network promoted a particular story, perhaps embellished that story, come up with some vague, anonymous or unidentified sources to push a certain narrative about another group of people or another individual. And that narrative ended up causing a certain amount of civil unrest. It led in some cases to people being harassed, people being even attacked, perhaps even killed. I think we can all think of examples of that over the last 10, 15 years just in this country. Now, were any of those journalists, indicted, arrested, put in prison? No, they weren't. Perhaps journalists who engage in that kind of shoddy gutter journalism should be publicly admonished. They should be forced to apologize and retract, and they should probably be forced to go look for another job. But we're not throwing them in prison. And really, so therefore, why then were they going after Assange? They were going after him because he just embarrassed the government, and he just did what no governments like, which is governments always tend to believe, no matter who's running, no matter which party we're talking about is in charge, governments, and we're not just talking about the US government, we're talking about any government, governments tend to believe that what they are actually doing behind the scenes is none of the public's business, and they can do whatever they want. And anyone who dares to expose the things they're doing, well, they're going to punish them just because of that, just because they basically thumbed their nose at the government. Now, is he a hero or a danger to society? Well, I challenge anyone to explain to me how on earth Julian Assange was ever a danger to society. And I think all journalists, no matter which party's running the country, I think all journalists who genuinely, not making up stories to just to make people look bad for political reasons, but if they are genuinely doing proper investigative journalism and they are exposing genuinely nefarious actions on the part of the government, then I believe they should always be applauded.
I agree. Is this better or worse than Snowden, Dave?
So, well, I mean, if you're asking who is the worst traitor to the U.S., well, Snowden, hands down. Assange was a compiler. He just put before the public what Airman Bradley Manning gave him, and Manning provided the CDs full of highly classified Defense and State Department information, and he's in jail, I hope, still, as he should be. But the problem here is it's the responsibility of the institution to classify data and to keep it safe. The Defense Department has a very good security training course called Insider Threats. The folks with security clearances, they have to take this course, but it's only as good as the people implementing the course content. Scrupulously mind the store on who has access to classified data. Scrupulously guard work product by not writing a lot of emails and memos. And when just running ideas up the flagpole to see if anybody salutes, do it in a hall conversation. Don't put it in writing. If you have great pride in authorship, then you're going to find yourself called in to explain it to the FBI, or worse, one of your colleagues is going to give it out as grist for the Washington, D.C. media. During Watergate scandal, all of those Ivy League staffers in the White House who took such pride in their flawless memos found out they were writing depositions.
Yeah, that's why if anybody's ever noticed, I do not take notes. And I know people think I'm not paying attention, but I do not take notes for a reason. Anyway, that's just a little, nobody needs to know why I do that, but
How will you
okay.
write your memoirs?
From memory.
It's all in here.
By the way,
All in
Dave,
here.
So you
Steel
think.
trap, baby.
Chelsea Manning was released from prison in 2017. She served from 2010 to 2017. And I just want to make a note of how the powers that be, I agreed with everything that John McClure said, except for one thing, which was he talked about how the mainstream media is in the pocket for Joe Biden. And I would just say they just are in the pocket for the establishment. Joe Biden just happens to be the establishment spokesperson at the time, but they would gladly shift to any new person once they get their kind of establishment marching orders. But the federal government didn't just prosecute Bradley and then who became Chelsea Manning for alleged crimes. They treated that person like they were terrorists. In other words, the torturous conditions that Bradley and then Chelsea Manning underwent, I think it was only because of Glenn Greenwald publicizing those and then getting support from many Americans, including many Americans who thought that Bradley or Chelsea Manning should go to prison, but not be tortured while they were there, in terms of leaving a light on 24 hours a day, constant checks so they couldn't get any sleep, this horrible treatment. And we have to presume that that was imposed by the power structure in order to break and the will of Manning. And I just want to say that that's another component of the story. It's not like they're clean hands with how that person was treated.
Right.
And I don't think that person did necessarily the right thing, but I know that they thought when they did it, they were helping America and Americans, and they didn't have the impetus to try to aid American enemies or rivals, which I think is an important part of the picture there.
I think that it's kind of more narcissistic self-aggrandizement and taking it upon themselves to do what they think is right, regardless of what they have been told is right. And if that's the attitude that we can expect from our armed services, I think we're in really big problems. And none of these people ever, not one time took the advantage of the chain of command to go up, express their concerns all the way up, which you have the opportunity to do. No, they took it upon themselves because they know better.
I agree with you 100%. And also, that was an act of journalism that Assange did. And I think it's wrong to punish it like it's an act of war against the country.
I think Assange is really in this is just the dupe. I don't see him as being good, bad, or indifferent.
I would encourage everybody to watch that long video that Bradley Manning leaked, by the way, or WikiLeaks leaked, because I mean, that's what's being done. That is war. And for better or worse, I think it's good that people can be informed about what happens. This was an act of war where some innocent people were killed because actors in theater thought they were combatants, and they weren't. And, the United States was embarrassed about that, but it's an important part of recognizing this happens in war.
You don't do it twice.
Before we agree to war, we should know we are going to be killing innocent people, almost certainly. It better be worth it. Anyway,
I think you're right about that, Scott. And I certainly would agree that, when you go to war, it's a messy business. You better know what you're about. And I think that most of our leadership really takes that into consideration. It's the politicians that think it's a great idea, and we should send them over and give them a gun for a couple of days and put them on the front lines. They might think differently.
I mean, you know what? We all claim journalism creds on this show. And would we take, juicy information and source it and write about it? I think we would. So did Assange do the right thing by taking a plea? I mean, did that
he's got to
diminish
go.
what he did
He
in the
wants to
first
see his
place?
family before he dies. I mean,
also, sorry, but I mean, imagine you're the lawyer. You don't have to be a lawyer to understand. Your client goes home now or rolls the dice with a judge or jury and can go to jail for 50 years. What lawyer would recommend, and what person? I mean, literally, he has no choice. He has to go home.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I agree totally with John on that one. I mean, I think it's appalling that he had to do this plea deal, and he had to plead guilty. I think it's appalling that he had to end up pleading guilty to anything, because the mere fact that he did is a that is a dark day for journalism when he did so. However, I do agree with John that really, from his point of view, did he have any other choice whatsoever? Well, yeah, he had one choice. Yeah, he could have gone to jail for the rest of his life. But if he wanted to become a free man, he had to go with that plea deal. But that was a dark day for freedom of speech and for journalism when he pled guilty to that even that one charge.
And I think Scott would agree as a lawyer, this isn't really precedent. He pled, but the government has never proved its case. So if another similar case came in, it isn't, under stare decisis, oh, you're guilty of espionage. He pled. They'd still have to prove their case from scratch. Don't you agree, Scott?
Yes, the only precedent enforced here is when you go up against the machine's going to win and grind you down. And the American government, it's one of the components of the story that's kind of interesting, I think, because of all this international play. People don't understand. It's all the U.S. government that's doing this. The U.K. authorities didn't want him. Sweden didn't really want him. From the get-go, from 15 years ago, his attorney told the Swedish authorities, he will return to Sweden voluntarily to face these charges, provided you say that at the conclusion of either the trial and a not guilty verdict or a sentence after being found guilty, that you won't give him to the Americans, right? We think this is all a ruse for you to give him to the Americans. So just demonstrate to us that that's not the case, and he'll submit to your authority. And they never would. So it's always been just about American forces getting a hold of him and punishing him for embarrassing us. Those diplomatic cables that were talked about that he released, they were damaging because they were embarrassing, because they revealed that the public statements didn't match the privately held thoughts during a war. And I think it was great information for Americans to get, that they were being lied to about what was really happening in service of furthering the war. It's just the exact kind of journalism that we need in wartime, I think.
Agreed. I really think when things like this happen, Americans are going to lose, because then people aren't going to step up. They're going to be going, I don't want to be in maximum security for hiding a source. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for Free Thinking, Free Speech, LibertyNation.com.